Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. The government kicked off a blockbuster disinvestment plan lining up the sale of 5 public sector units, including majority stakes in blue chip oil company Bharat Petroleum Corp Ltd and Shipping Corporation of India. Also on sale will be a 31% stake in Container Corporation of India along with management control. Based on current market prices, the sale of stakes in these 3 firms will fetch the Modi government about 78,400 crore rupees, taking it close to the disinvestment target for the fiscal year. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, which met under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also cleared the sale of its entire stake in Tehri Hydro Development Corporation of India and Northeastern Electric Power Corporation to NTPC. The CCEA also gave in-principle clearance to the reduction of the government stake in select public sector units to 51%, while retaining management control on case-to-case basis, taking into account the government shareholding and the shareholding of government-controlled institution. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the strategic disinvestment announcement by the government. Joining me on the program today are SUSHIL Chandra Tripathi, former Principal Secretary Finance, Uttar Pradesh; Bhanuchandra Nagarajan, former consultant, the World Bank; and SANTOSH TIWARI, Senior Director, FICCI. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Tripathi, let me begin the program with you. What do you make of this mega disinvestment plan of the government?
I would welcome it. NDA-1 had initiated disinvestment process and strategic disinvestment as well, because there is a difference between normal disinvestment, selling some shares in a company and retaining 51% control in the company. In that case, that company works as a public sector company and it has to follow all the obligations which a state has to follow, because under Article 12 of the Constitution, it is taken as a representative of the state. So, all the socio-economic obligations of state, that company has to follow. But when the share of government goes below 51%, then it becomes a private company. It may remain a public listed company, but then the government control ceases and it can operate like any other commercial entity. In case of NDA-1, the major disinvestment and strategic disinvestment that took place was of BALCO and Hindustan Zinc. At that point of time, I was the last government appointed CMD of BALCO, and of course, Hindustan Zinc, there was another CMD, but it was also being handled by the same ministry where I was working, the Mines Ministry. So, we had a good experience how to go about it, how to make it a transparent process and also give it in suitable hands. And I can say that today both BALCO and Hindustan Zinc are doing reasonably well. Hindustan Zinc is doing extremely well, both from the point of view of production and from the point of view of giving resources to the country and general economic development. So, thereafter somehow the strategic disinvestment was not recommended or not followed. Now, it seems that the government has taken a decision that in some cases strategic disinvestment will take place. And I think BPCL is a good case, because even in NDA-1, HPCL was slated to be strategically disinvested. But at that point of time, legal impediment came up, because both BPCL and HPCL, they were taken over under a parliamentary legislation. So, until that legislation was revoked or modified, it was not feasible legally to let go the government control, and that was the decision taken by the then Supreme Court bench, due to which HPCL disinvestment could not take place. Now, of course, HPCL has been taken over by ONGC, and therefore, between the 3 major oil companies which were controlled by government, IOC, BPCL and HPCL, IOC is the largest, which government should continue to hold, because that will give a benchmark, and also government will be able to effectively ensure that the fair play is maintained in the market. HPCL has gone to ONGC. So, BPCL is a good case and it is a fairly large and well run company. So, I expect BPCL alone can bring about 50,000 crores of rupees. Now, coming to shipping corporation, shipping is a very competitive business, and shipping corporation earlier used to do very well, but the decision making process in the company has been such that they went on acquiring ships when the prices of ships were very high. And by the time the ships came and joined the fleet, the revenue, which was the rentals, the Baltic Index, etc., they fell. So thereafter, the shipping corporation has not been doing so efficiently, and there is no necessity nowadays, because the trade is all competitive business. Transport, shipping transport is all competitive. So it's a good case for disinvestment. Maybe in a more competitive environment, shipping corporation can do much better. Lastly, coming to the third case of container corporation, I think it has very close linkage with railways, and therefore strategic disinvestment is not taking place. Only some shares are being sold, and I suppose other companies also, case by case, they will be taking up.
Right.
So on the whole, I think it's a good move. Let us see how it progresses. It will take some time, and it may generate a better environment for investment also.
All right, all right. Santosh Tiwari, there's talk about management control as well. So how is this going to change things as far as some of these PSUs are concerned?
Frank, you have to look at the whole decision which Cabinet has taken yesterday in two ways. One is that it is now clear from the government intent that they want to walk the talk, and industry chambers, including FICCI, have welcomed the decision. FICCI President Mr. Somani has said that A, this whole decision will ensure that the company's performance will improve. At least it will go in the right direction. And B, expansion and also fresh investment will now accrue to these companies. So this is what is the intent of the government. But what I was saying was that more important today is what government is doing on the disinvestment front. You have been meeting targets for last 2 financial years, and that is not a small target. 90,000 crore, 1 lakh crore. So that much money is coming into government kitty. This year is also 1 lakh 5 crore. Up till now, government has garnered around 12,000 crore, more than 12,000 crore. So still you have a gap. What these 3 companies would do, it will give you 78,000 odd crores. So you will reach near the target. So you are meeting the target, When you do strategic disinvestment after a brief lull or after a lull of around 9, 10 years or 12 years, your government had to show that it is seriously thinking of doing strategic disinvestment. That thing is now very clear with these 3 decisions. Another decision which has come is that the government is now ready to go to 51% in case of other companies. Niti Aayog has charted out a complete list of companies, how you want to move ahead in this direction. Now the government is showing you, telling you that we are ready to go and look at that list, in a very serious manner. So wherever, in whichever company, if the government decides that we will go for a strategic disinvestment, that company will be sold. Wherever they want to retain some government stake, that will also happen, and government will take decision on case-to-case basis. Again, I would say, what I was saying initially was that now the government intent is very, very clear that they want to do something in case of disinvestment, where it is not only an exercise where you are getting some money or getting an extent of money bringing to the exchequer, but it is also seriously inclined to improve the functioning of those public sector units, which was required for quite some time. Whatever way possible, if it can be done through strategic investment, that would be opted. If it can be done through little bit of disinvestment, that will also be done. So a direction has now been made, and that is very important, Frank, now.
Okay, all right. Banu, this is not a new idea, but what do you make of development through strategic disinvestment?
The disinvestment makes economic sense when you look at it from a strategic perspective, and financial sense if you look at from a short-term perspective. Economic sense over a strategic perspective, because private run firms are actually operate more efficiently. They have flexible regulations about hiring and firing. They can easily bring new technologies. So the companies can be more competitive in the market, and it actually creates overall shareholder value for who is holding shares and in terms of tax revenues as well. Many of the companies that Mr. Tripathi was mentioning that went into disinvestment during NDA 1, during Vajpayee's years, Balco, Hindustan Zinc, VSNL, Maruti Suzuki, Modern Foods, all of them are now doing spectacularly well. Like, you know, the value of those firms are now like 17 times, 18 times compared to what they were now. Okay, so there is economic sense because like the privatization brings efficiency, privatization brings best practices and so on. From a short term perspective, it makes financial sense because, as you mentioned in your initial remarks, we have a disinvestment target and a fiscal deficit problem. Okay, so the disinvestment target is as 1,05,000 crore. So till I think the latest numbers that we have got so far in this financial year is around 13,000 crores, give or take a few crores. This includes the recent IPO of IRCTC. So now you get around, the numbers vary for the valuation of how much you will get for BPCL, because the market cap is around like a lakh and 1.12 lakh crores. If you disinvest like 53,000, it's around like 60,000 crores. But also there are other additionalities because that Numalgad refinery is not going to be part of the strategic sale. Then there is a premium that the government will get for like ceding control. Then there is actually like market conditions and so on. So the final valuation is kind of somewhere around the final number has to be arrived at. But overall, you will get around, say, like even if you get like say 70,000 crore from the all of the not just BPCL but also the other companies that are going to be disinvested. So we get to around like 85,000 crores. Okay, that leaves us with around 20,000 crores of disinvestment target that has to be met through other means. So now we have the RailTel IPO coming in January. Then like the finance minister said that Air India is going to be disinvested. So the details are like yet to emerge. But so like as far as disinvestment target is concerned, we are on track. When you come to the fiscal deficit numbers also, this helps. Other than these disinvestment targets, we are going to get 58,000 crores from the Reserve Bank as a part of the surplus money that is going to be given to the government. So I think to tide over a lot of these gaps, this disinvestment becomes financially very important when you look at it from a short-term perspective.
Right. Okay.
So this is the overall short and long-term benefits of what we get through disinvestment.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Tripathi, why these 5 PSUs, and also what are some of the other PSUs that are ripe for the picking as far as strategic disinvestment is concerned?
You see, there are some PSUs which are not really saleable. They only have assets, but those assets also bring lots of liabilities. Even Air India, for that matter, the whole of Air India is not so attractive to be sold, but the assets of Air India are quite attractive. There is a company called Scooters India, which for the last 20 years has been on offer for sale, but really nobody has been coming forward with a purchase offer which is worthwhile. So many of these companies are beset with either large amounts of loans, unless those loans are written off, their machineries have become outdated, technology is outdated. They also have some of them have a large labor force which is not efficient, productivity is low. So case by case they will have to take up, and they have to ensure that unless those companies are giving some strategic value and or they are very important for a fair market place to operate, I think the government should slowly get out of business. The 2020s are different from 1950s and 1960s, when the private sector had not really come up to the level to take up these large companies, when the market was not fair. Even for that matter, as I mentioned, Indian Oil was very small, and BPCL, HPCL in their old incarnation were Esso, Caltex and Burma Shell, and they were controlling the market. And oil being such an important input both for economy and for defense, the government was always feeling very uncomfortable, and 1971 operations showed that. So that was the reason that these two companies were taken over and then they expanded. Indian Oil became a giant now. Indian Oil is 2 times or 3 times the size of BPCL. So now the whole situation is different, and therefore individually there are about, all taken together about 250 companies, public sector companies. So most of them can be disinvested either as company or assets. So I think the government is taking steps, but there is lethargy. Each ministry which has been controlling them has been taking them as their own asset, as their own company, rather than ministry should be working for that sector, not for that public sector only. But this distinction somehow is forgotten, and many ministers and secretaries get too attached to that public sector and they try to develop it, keep getting more money for those companies in spite of the fact that they are no longer viable. So these things have to be examined and taken care of.
Okay, all right. Santosh Tiwari, so Mr. Tripathi spoke about bleeding entities. Is disinvestment the best way to deal with bleeding entities, and are there going to be takers for some of these bleeding entities?
Yes, this is a question which the government has to think about right now, especially when you have huge churning in private sector, private industries. At this juncture, if you opt for bailout routes for public sector units, or if you allow them to continue the way Mr. Tripathi was saying, that the ministries are holding on to it and they want them to continue. If you opt for that route, then obviously you are killing 2 things. One, they will never revive if they are not doing well. 2, if they are doing well, like BPCL. Today you have suitors. Today you will get companies from outside also, for BPCL. So it's a good case, for disinvestment today. So if you don't do or opt this route today for PSUs, then you will miss the chance going ahead. So what is required today is to have a long-term strategy. Why only long-term? You must have identified PSUs for disinvestment in next 2 years, or probably in medium term, and then over a period of time. Depending on their marketability or depending on the kind of people who would be interested in buying those companies, your policy should be developed, your decisions should be taken that when you want to bring in a particular company to the market for disinvestment. That smart move has to be there. So if the government has shown seriousness that yes, the intent is now very clear that they would go for a strategic disinvestment wherever required and go for any other option, which is feasible in the case of any of the companies, then the next move should be that there has to be a timeline and a structure and a framework in which companies are identified and they have to put out for disinvestment. If this model is not there, and if you are working in a manner that today we have picked up 5 companies, and then when this financial year ends, again next financial year we will look at the target, what is the target, and then we will look for 5 companies who will be meeting the target and there will be disinvestment, and then whatever is feasible next financial year. If this is the kind of approach which government is going to take, then obviously this year you may get 1 lakh crore, but you may not get the result or the output, both in terms of improving those companies' PSUs performance and also in terms of getting what is due to the government. This will become little difficult. So what is required today is a clear-cut strategy of the government with this intent that yes, this is our roadmap for disinvestment and this is what it is for the next 5 years. This is how we want to go about it.
Okay, all right. So Banu, what has our experience been as far as disinvestment is concerned, and also what's likely to happen in the future as far as some of the other PSUs are concerned?
So if you look at the history of disinvestment, we just spoke about it. During the NDA 1, the amount of disinvestment that was carried was around 30,000 crores. And during the next 2 UPA governments, it was around 90,000 crores. Many strategic disinvestments could not be carried out because of political reasons, because the UPA 1 had the support of the communist parties. So, but the Big Bang reform actually, which is actually kind of giving the framework for this disinvestment to happen, happened in 2016 under the Repeal and Amendment Act of 2016, which annulled 187 laws. So this was I call it Big Bang because it annulled the emergency era nationalization acts, the Burma Burma Act, the Burma Shell Company Act, and a couple of other acts that actually relate to HPCL as well. So these were actually taken off during 2016, and that provided the framework for this disinvestment to happen. So far, like if you take Modi 1 and 2 so far together, they have achieved a target of 2,80,000 crores of disinvestment. So Vajpayee was 30,000, UPA was 90,000, and Modi government, the BJP government in the last 6 years has been 5.5 years has been 2,80,000. So like you can actually imagine the scale of it. Okay, so so I think like there's a recasting of the disinvestment process under this government. So like if you look at see, it's not just the big bang disinvestment. Even if you take the small IPOs that actually like got like 600 crores, for example, IRCTC. So there is a general move towards a direction that we should appreciate. So this is how it has gone so far. So let's see, like I don't know whether it is possible to have a really 5-year strategic disinvestment plan, because many of these are political in nature. Market timing is important. For example, right now I think a lot of these IPOs are coming because the market is doing pretty well. I mean the economy per se is going a bit slower, but the market is like doing very well. So I think there are many of these concerns. So let's see how these pan out. So I wonder whether a strategic plan is even possible. You can actually have an approximate disinvestment target, but you can't say like I'm going to disinvest all of this a particular amount of this company in this year or so on.
Okay, all right. Since you are here, Mr. Tripathi, what challenges do you foresee in the government meeting its disinvestment targets?
I think the time factor, because lots of preparation is required to be made. There has to be a data room, and most of these government companies, they are not very careful about their legal rights on land and various other assets. So the documents may not be there. They will have to procure the documents, because whosoever is buying, he wants to make sure that he has a title on various assets. Similarly, the assets, equipments, insurance of those equipments, whether they are really with proper insurance and they are in proper shape, and so all these things, the details have to be worked out. Data room has to be set up. Then roadshow. You should know who are the likely investors. If you don't know who are the likely investors, then you may not get the best price and the most suitable investor. So the roadshow for likely investors has to be organized. This takes time. The transaction advisor, the valuation advisor, the legal advisor, they have to go through so many documents, prepare everything ready for investors to have a look at, and then make a bid. So it takes time. I'll be pleasantly surprised if all this goes through in the next 3.5-4 months.
Okay. All right. Santosh, what's the best way forward then?
The best way forward would be to be optimistic about getting 78,000 crore this fiscal, because the government needs it. That's one. But with disinvestment, what we forget is that there is an alternate route, which is a very good route if the government succeeds in opting for that route in a manner which takes it to some place where it yields the kind of results it can. That is monetization of PSU assets. So once you have started moving forward in disinvestment direction, there is no going back. Let me tell you, that much optimism is there with everybody, that with these 3 decisions, for a strategic disinvestment, there is no going back. Government is not going back. But with this, if you bring in monetization of PSU assets, government is sitting on large chunk of assets of PSUs. There have been number of reports, serious reports on how monetization of PSU assets can yield you huge amount of money, unlock such amount of money which can be utilized in developmental work. That is also one area where there has to be a strategy, there has to be a plan. Again, I'll tell you that there have been reports which are very good reports. There have been reports which have given you the idea of what kind of resources you will get from this particular area. You have to just seriously work in that area. So the way the government has shown intent in terms of disinvestment, in terms of monetization also, it's not that it's not happening. It's happening. 50,000 crore, 90,000 crore monetization target you are keeping for PSUs. But here also you have to have a strategy. With disinvestment, you must have a monetization of PSU assets strategy at the national level with the central government, and you must have a target again here of a time-bound program. that if you have X amount of asset and you want to unlock this much asset, then you have a strategy for unlocking those assets, in a time-bound fashion.
All right. And Banu, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
So the government has actually bitten the bullet. Like easily, this government is turning out to be the most reformist in terms of disinvestment we have ever seen. Just carrying on from the previous disinvestment numbers of 2,80,000 crores, the future looks like so exciting and optimistic in terms of just if you look at the disinvestment and reformist agenda. So in fact, like the previous government did a lot of sale of assets between public sector organizations, PSUs and so on. So there are, this government has started with a lot of strategic sales, so which is actually very important. So all of this will actually add to the economic momentum that we already that is expected of this government, and this will lead to the $5 trillion economy goal that the Prime Minister has set for the country to reach by 2024. So I think like this is all part of a plan. Hopefully, like what Mr. Tripathi was saying, the devil is in the execution. How far we execute, how fast we execute, cutting out the teething problems will determine how successful this investment program will be.
Okay, all right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the government's decision to go for a strategic sale of certain PSUs is a step in the right direction. Of course, there are several more PSUs that are ripe for the picking, is what the panelists are suggesting. What's important to keep note of is that we need to ensure that time is of essence and need to proceed with the sale in a very time-bound manner. The history has shown us that strategic disinvestment has worked for the companies that have been disinvested, and that's the best way forward, is what the panelists are suggesting as far as the economy on the whole is concerned as well. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.